First Kings chapter 6, verse 1. It was in mid-spring, in the month of Zib, during the 4th year of Solomon's reign, that he began to construct the temple of the Lord. This was 480 years after the people of Israel were rescued from their slavery in the land of Egypt. Verse 2. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Verse 3. The entry room at the front of the temple was 30 feet wide, running across the entire width of the temple. It projected outward 15 feet from the front of the temple. Verse 4. Solomon also made narrow recessed windows throughout the temple. Verse 5. He built a complex of rooms against the outer walls of the temple, all the way around the sides and rear of the building. Verse 6. The complex was 3 stories high, the bottom floor being 71 by 2 feet wide, the second floor 9 feet wide, and the top floor 101 by 2 feet wide. The rooms were connected to the walls of the temple by beam resting on ledges built out from the wall, so the beams were not inserted into the wall themselves. Verse 7. The stones used in the construction of the temple were finished at the quarry, so there was no sound of hammer, axe, or any other iron tools at the building site. Verse 8. The entrance to the bottom floor was on the south side of the temple. There were winding stairs going up to the second floor, and another flight of stairs between the second and third floors. Verse 9. After completing the temple structure, Solomon put in a ceiling made of cedar beams and planks. Verse 10. As already stated, he built a complex of rooms along the sides of the building, attached to the temple walls by cedar timbers. Each story of the complex was 71 by 2 feet high. Verse 11. Then the Lord gave this message to Solomon. Verse 12. Concerning this temple you are building, if you keep all my decrees and regulations and obey all my commands, I will fulfill through you the promise I made to your father David. Verse 13. I will live among the Israelites and will never abandon my people Israel. Verse 14. So Solomon finished building the temple. Verse 15. The entire inside, from floor to ceiling, was paneled with wood. He paneled the walls and ceilings with cedar, and he used planks of cypress for the floors. Verse 16. He partitioned off an inner sanctuary, the most holy place, at the far end of the temple. It was 30 feet deep and was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling. Verse 17. The main room of the temple, outside the most holy place, was 60 feet long. Verse 18. Cedar paneling completely covered the stone walls throughout the temple. The paneling was decorated with carvings of gold and open flowers. Verse 19. He prepared the inner sanctuary at the far end of the temple, where the Ark of the Lord's covenant would be placed. Verse 20. This inner sanctuary was 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 30 feet high. He overlaid the inside with solid gold. He also overlaid the altar made of cedar. Verse 21. Then Solomon overlaid the rest of the temple's interior with solid gold, and he made gold chains to protect the entrance to the most holy place. Verse 22. So he finished overlaying the entire temple with gold, including the altar that belonged to the most holy place. Verse 23. He made 2 cherubim of wild olive wood, each 15 feet tall, and placed them in the inner sanctuary. Verse 24. The wingspan of each of the cherubim was 15 feet, each wing being 71 by 2 feet long. Verse 25. The two cherubim were identical in shape and size. Verse 26. Each was 15 feet tall. Verse 27. He placed them side by side in the inner sanctuary of the temple. Their outspread wings reached from wall to wall, while their inner wing touched at the center of the room. Verse 28. He overlaid the two cherubim with gold. Verse 29. He decorated the walls of the inner sanctuary and the main room with carvings of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. Verse 30. He overlaid the floor in both rooms with gold. Verse 31. For the entrance to the inner sanctuary, he made double doors of wild olive wood with 5-sided doorposts. Verse 32. These double doors were decorated with carvings of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. The doors, including the decorations of cherubim and palm trees, were overlaid with gold. Verse 33. Then he made 4-sided doorposts of wild olive wood for the entrance to the temple. Verse 34. There were 2 folding doors of cypress wood, and each door was hinged to fold back upon itself. Verse 35. These doors were decorated with carvings of cherubims, palm trees, and open flowers, all overlaid evenly with gold. Verse 36. The walls of the inner courtyard were built so that there was 1 layer of cedar beams between every 3 layers of finished stone. Verse 37. The foundation of the Lord's temple was laid in mid-spring in the month of Ziv, during the 4th year of Solomon's reign. Verse 38. The entire building was completed in every detail in mid-autumn, in the month of Bul, during the 11th year of his reign. So it took 7 years to build the temple. Amen.